As the family prepared to return to their shop's front room, Lyra lingered behind. The child's body pulsed with curious pink light as she studied Sunmay. "I've never met a human before. Will you tell me about Earth?" Before Sunmay could answer, station alarms began blaring. The search for the crashed ship's pilot had begun. But as she looked at the crystalline family who had risked everything to help her, Sunmi felt something she hadn't expected to find on this hostile station: hope. The Krill family had no reason to help her, yet they had chosen to show kindness to a stranger, a human, no less. As security forces marched past the shop, Sunmi realized she had found not just refuge, but perhaps something even more precious: friends. The days following Sunmi's arrival brought unexpected changes to the storage room of the Krill family shop. Tix, the youngest of the crystalline children, spent every free moment watching the human with unabashed curiosity. The child's crystalline form would pulse with bright, eager colors whenever Sunmi moved or spoke. One quiet morning, Tix brought a piece of drawing material, a flat, metallic surface that could be marked with light touches. The child sat cross-legged on the floor, beckoning Sunmi to join. With careful movements, Tix began to trace patterns that glowed on the surface. Sunmi watched as simple shapes emerged: circles, lines, and what appeared to be a rough drawing of herself. She smiled and took the offered drawing tool, adding details to the image. Tix's entire body lit up with delight, casting rainbow patterns across the storage room walls. They developed their own language through these drawings. Sunmi would sketch Earth animals, and Tix would respond with alien creatures from their home world. The metallic surface filled with their shared artwork, a bridge between their different species. Vox, the middle child, noticed their growing connection and began joining their sessions. Unlike Tix's playful approach, Vox took on the role of a teacher. The child taught Sunmi how their species communicated through crystal song, vibrations that traveled through their mineral bodies, creating complex harmonies of light and sound. "Watch," Vox would say, body humming with a gentle frequency that made the storage crates resonate. "Each color has its own song. Blue for calm, red for danger, purple for decision." Sunmi learned to recognize the subtle differences in their crystal songs. She couldn't replicate them, but she began to understand the complex language of light and vibration that the Krill family used. When Vox successfully taught her to interpret a simple greeting sequence, the child's body blazed with proud golden light. Meanwhile, Lox, the eldest, took responsibility for their safety. The older child developed an intricate system of warning signals, different colored lights that could be seen through the shop's crystalline walls. Green meant safe, amber meant be quiet, and red meant hide immediately. These precautions proved necessary as Station Security Officer Kath began making regular patrols past their shop. The tall, angular alien would pause outside, their sensor arrays sweeping the area. Kath's species could detect minute energy variations, making them excellent security officers and dangerous enemies for anyone hiding secrets. "There's something different about this place," Kath mentioned to a fellow officer one day, while the Krill family pretended to arrange their mineral displays. "The energy patterns have changed." Inside the storage room, Sunmi held her breath as the security officer's scanning beam passed nearby. Locke's warning light pulsed red, and she quickly ducked behind a large crystal formation. The family had modified it to mask her life signs, but they couldn't risk taking chances. The increased security attention forced them to be more creative. Vox taught Sunbai how to move silently, matching her footsteps to the natural resonance of the station's crystal structures. Tix created elaborate drawings that could be quickly hidden inside hollow mineral specimens. Even their parents adapted, timing their deliveries and customer interactions to create natural noise that would mask any sounds from the storage room. One evening, as the station's artificial day cycle dimmed, Sunma sat with all three children, teaching them a human game using light patterns they could replicate with their bodies. Their laughter, a chiming, crystalline sound, filled the small space with joy. The moment was interrupted by Koth's voice outside the shop. Another energy spike. Something's not right here. The navigation system crackled and sparked as Lee Sunmei frantically tried to regain control of her cargo ship. Red warning lights flooded the cockpit as the vessel spiraled toward Trading Station Delta 9, a massive structure that gleamed like a silver needle against the backdrop of space. Her fingers flew across the control panel, but nothing responded. Come on, she muttered, watching as the distance between her ship and the station's outer hull decreased rapidly. The emergency thrusters sputtered weakly, barely slowing her descent. With a bone-jarring crash, her ship skidded across the station's landing pad, leaving a trail of twisted metal and broken parts in its wake. Sunmi's head throbbed as she pulled herself from the wreckage. The artificial gravity on the station felt strange after months in space. She stumbled, catching herself against a cargo container. That's when she saw the sign. No humans permitted. Violators will be detined. Her heart sank. Trading Station Delta 9 was infamous among human pilots for its strict anti-human policies. The station served as a hub for multiple alien species who viewed humans as dangerous and unpredictable. Being stranded here was possibly worse than dying in a crash. The sound of approaching footsteps sent her diving behind a stack of crates. Through a gap, she watched as a family of crystalline beings walked past. Their bodies seemed to be made of translucent minerals that caught and reflected the station's lights in rainbow patterns. The smallest one, clearly a child, stopped and turned its faceted head toward her hiding spot. "Lyra, come along," called one of the adults in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. But the child didn't move. Instead, it took a step closer to the crates. Suddenly held her breath, pressing herself further into the shadows. The child's crystalline body began to pulse with soft blue light. "I see you," the child said in surprisingly clear standard English. "You're hurt." Sunlit froze, unsure whether to run or respond. Before she could decide, the entire family had gathered around her hiding spot. The two adults, their bodies glowing with cautious amber light, peered down at her. "A human," said the taller one, its voice resonating like struck crystal. "Knox, we should call station security." The other adult, presumably Knox, knelt down to get a better look at Sunmai. Its crystalline form shifted colors, moving through shades of green and blue. "Riza, look at her injuries. She needs help." Sunmi touched her forehead, her fingers coming away bloody. She hadn't even noticed the cut in her panic after the crash. The third child, middle in size, spoke up. "Father, the security forces will put her in detention. You know how they treat humans here." Knox's crystalline body pulsed with decisive purple light. "We can't leave her here. Our shop has the storage room in the back. No one ever checks there." "It's too dangerous," Riza protested, but her colors had shifted to a softer, more sympathetic blue. "If we're caught harboring a human." The smallest child, Lyra, reached out and touched Sunmi's hand. The crystal surface was warm and vibrated slightly, sending a gentle tingling sensation up her arm. "She's scared, Mother. Like the wounded creatures Father helps in his shop." Sunmi found her voice at last. "Please," she whispered. "I won't cause any trouble. I just need time to repair my ship and leave." The family's colors swirled in what appeared to be a silent conversation. Finally, Riza's form settled into a resigned purple hue matching her husband's. "Very well, but we must move quickly. Security will be here soon to investigate the crash." With surprising strength, Knox helped Sunmi to her feet. The children formed a protective circle around her, their crystalline bodies partially obscuring her from view. They hurried through the station's corridors, past shops and trading posts run by various alien species. Sunmi kept her head down, painfully aware of how much she stood out. The Krill family's shop was modest but well-kept, filled with shelves of minerals and crystals. They rushed her through to a back room, packed with storage crates and mineral samples. Riza quickly treated her wounds with a strange, glowing paste that stopped the bleeding instantly. "You'll be safe here," Nox assured her, his crystalline form glowing with warm, comforting colors. "We'll figure out what to do next after the security sweep passes." The children quickly dispersed, their bodies dimming to match the ambient light. But as they moved away, Tix turned back and pressed something into Sunmi's hand, a small crystal that pulsed warmly with the colors of friendship. In that moment, Sunmi realized that what had started as a desperate bid for survival had become something more. Despite the danger, despite their differences, they were forging connections that transcended species. Each drawing, each crystal song lesson, each shared moment of laughter was another barrier broken between their worlds. As she clutched the glowing crystal, watching Koth's shadow pass by the shop entrance, Sunmi understood that she wasn't just hiding anymore. She was becoming part of a family that defied the station's prejudices with every act of kindness. The storage unit became Sunmi's world, but the Krill family made sure it never felt like a prison. Each day brought new discoveries as she immersed herself in their crystal culture. The first time she witnessed their crystal growth ceremony, it took her breath away. Riza and Nox gathered their children in a circle, their bodies pulsing with deep, resonant light. They placed a raw crystal in the center, and the family began to hum in harmony. The sound vibrated through the metal floors and walls, making the crystal fragment dance with energy. As Sunmi watched, amazed, tiny crystalline structures began sprouting from its surface. "It's how we honor our ancestors," Nox explained later, his form glowing with gentle blue light. "Each new growth carries the memories of our family." In return, Sunmi shared her own culture. She taught the children to play hopscotch, drawing the squares with light on the floor. Tix particularly loved it, their crystalline form bouncing and chiming with joy. When Vox asked about human music, Sunmi sang traditional Korean lullabies, watching in wonder as the family's crystal bodies resonated with each note. But the most surprising change came gradually. Riza noticed it first, a faint, flesh-colored tinge appearing in her crystalline arm after helping Sunmi organize the storage space. Soon, all family members showed similar marks. "It's impossible," whispered a concerned Nox, examining his children's subtly changing forms. "Our species has never shown organic pigmentation before." The children were fascinated rather than worried. Locke's usually clear surface now shimmered with hints of warm brown when they stood near Sunmi. Vox developed rosy patterns that appeared when they laughed at Sunmi's jokes. Even tiny ticks began showing swirls of color that matched Sunmi's skin tone when they played together. Riza documented these changes carefully, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial worry. "It's as if our crystals are trying to harmonize with your human form," she told Sunmi one evening, while examining the patterns under special light. The family adapted their daily routines to include Sunmi more fully in their lives. During quiet hours, when the shop was closed, they would share meals together. Though Sunmi couldn't eat their crystal supplements, they found human-compatible food in the station's market, disguising their purchases as exotic mineral samples. One night, during their evening crystal growth ceremony, something extraordinary happened. As the family hummed their ancient songs, Sunmi felt a strange tingling in her hands. Looking down, she saw tiny crystals forming on her skin, glowing with the same warm light as the Krill family. They dissolved moments later, but the event left everyone stunned. "It seems you're changing us as much as we're changing you," Riza said, her form pulsing with maternal warmth. The children began calling Sunmi their human sister in their crystal song language. Even Nox and Riza treated her more like a daughter than a refugee, teaching her their family's private crystal songs and sharing stories of their homeworld. But with these changes came new risks. Other crystalline beings at the station began noticing the family's unusual coloring. Questions arose about their altered appearance. The family deflected these inquiries, claiming it was a result of handling rare minerals in their shop. Yet, despite the danger, none of them regretted their decision to help Sunmi. Each passing day strengthened their unusual bond. Through shared laughter, songs, and quiet moments in their hidden sanctuary. They proved that family transcended physical form. As Sunmai watched Tix practice human dance moves, their crystal bodies sparkling with hints of her own skin tone, she realized that she'd found something precious in this unlikely place, a family that chose her, protected her, and changed themselves to include her in their world. The impossible pigmentation in their crystals became a visible symbol of their connection, a biological mystery that proved love could bridge the gap between stars and species, changing both human and crystal in ways science couldn't explain. The late-night quiet of Trading Station Delta 9 shattered when the storage room door slid open unexpectedly. Sunmai, who had been helping with inventory, found herself face-to-face with Dax, a serpentine merchant whose scales gleamed dully in the dim light. Time seemed to freeze. Dax's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air, while his yellow eyes widened in recognition. A human, he hissed softly. How interesting. Nox moved quickly, positioning himself between Sunmai and the door, his crystalline form pulsing with warning red light. But Dax merely smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. No need for alarm, neighbors, he said, his voice oily smooth. I simply came to discuss a business opportunity. Though now, it seems, the opportunity has become much more valuable. Riza gathered the children behind her, their bodies dimmed to barely visible shadows. What do you want, Dax? The serpentine merchant slithered fully into the room, closing the door behind him. Let's talk about the rare minerals market. My prices have been suffering lately, competing with your family's business. Perhaps we could arrange a more favorable situation, unless station security learns about your illegal guest. Lox, the eldest child, stepped forward, their crystal form blazing with defiant light. You mean like how security might learn about your smuggled Nexus crystals? Dax's scales rippled with surprise. I don't know what you're talking about. The shipments you hide inside hollow service droids, Vox added, their voice ringing with crystal song certainty. We've seen them. And the forged customs documents, Tix chimed in, projecting images onto the wall, copies of Dax's illegal paperwork, captured during his previous visits to their shop. Sunmai watched the serpentine merchant's confidence crumble as the family revealed piece after piece of evidence against him. They had been quietly documenting his illegal activities for months, it seemed, building a shield against just such a threat. You wouldn't dare, Dax hissed, but uncertainty made his voice waver. You'd draw too much attention to yourselves. Perhaps, Nox agreed, his crystalline form steady and calm. But are you willing to risk it? Your operation is much larger than our single act of kindness. Which do you think security would be more interested in investigating? The standoff stretched taut as crystal string. Then, heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, a security patrol approaching. Everyone froze. 3 crates of premium crystals, Dax whispered urgently. Monthly. At half your current price. And I saw nothing tonight. Riza's form pulsed with decisive purple. 2 crates, standard price. And you'll help us if we ever need it. The footsteps grew closer. Dax's scales rippled with nervous energy as he glanced at the door. Done, he hissed, just as someone knocked. Security check, came Officer Koth's voice. We detected unusual energy patterns in this sector. What happened next was a blur of coordinated movement. The family shifted into casual poses, while Sunlight slipped into a hidden compartment behind a crystal display. Dax smoothly transformed from threatening blackmailer to casual customer. When Koth entered, they found only a typical evening business scene. The Krill family showing merchandise to a regular client. But the security officer's sensors picked up traces of the recent tension. Everything all right here? Koth asked, scanning the room carefully. Just completing a late transaction, Nox replied smoothly, his crystal song pitch perfect. Dax was leaving. The serpentine merchant slithered toward the door, pausing only briefly. Always a pleasure doing business, he said, the words carrying multiple meanings. After both Dax and the security officer left, The family huddled around Sunmi's hiding spot as she emerged. Their crystalline forms shimmered with relief and lingering worry. "Will he keep quiet?" Sunmi asked softly. "He'll have to," Lox answered, projecting one last image, Dax's most recent illegal shipment details. "We kept the best evidence back, just in case." That night marked a shift in their situation. They had survived their first real threat, but the incident drew unwanted attention. As Sunmi lay awake later, listening to the family's quiet crystal songs, she knew their peaceful routine had changed forever. They were all in deeper now, bound together not just by choice and care, but by shared secrets and mutual protection. The game had become more dangerous, but they would face it together, their unlikely family growing stronger through each challenge. Officer Kuth's investigation of the Krill family shop intensified with each passing day. Security drones hovered near their entrance, scanning everyone who entered or left. The family's crystalline forms dimmed with worry as their customers dwindled, frightened away by the constant surveillance. One morning, Koth arrived with a team of station officials. Their sensor arrays swept through the shop, making the crystal displays vibrate uncomfortably. "Your energy readings have been irregular for weeks," Koth announced, voice cold and mechanical. "Our analysis suggests unauthorized activities." Sunmi listened from her hiding spot as Koth laid out their accusations. The family's trading license was under review. Their precious crystalline mining permits, passed down through generations, could be revoked. Without those, they would lose everything. Riza's form pulsed with distress as she tried to explain away the anomalies. "We've been experimenting with new crystal growth techniques," she said, her crystal song wavering slightly. "Nothing illegal, just innovative methods." "Innovation requires approval," Koth replied. "Your family has always followed regulations, until recently." The security officer's sensors probed deeper into the shop. "You have 24 hours to allow a full inspection, or we'll shut you down." After the officials left, Sunmi emerged from hiding. "I should give myself up," she said quietly. "I can't let you lose everything because of me." The family's crystals all flared with protest. Ticks clung to her arm, their small form trembling with rainbow lights. Vox and Riza began arguing about options, their crystal songs creating a chaotic harmony of worry and fear. But Lox stood silent, their crystalline surface showing unusual patterns. "I have a plan," they finally said, cutting through the noise. "But it's dangerous." The family gathered close as Lox projected a holographic map of the station's mineral transport system. Every day, automated cargo pods carry raw crystals from the mining docks to the processing centers. The pods are shielded to protect sensitive minerals. "Shielded enough to hide life signs?" Nox asked, his form brightening with understanding. "Exactly," Lox continued. "I've been studying the system. There's a maintenance access point near our shop. If we time it right, we could get Sunmi into a pod bound for the civilian docks." The plan was risky. The transport system was automated, but monitored. One wrong move would trigger alarms throughout the station, and even if they succeeded, Sunmi would have to survive alone in a cargo pod for hours. As they discussed details, Officer Kuth's warning echoed through the station's communication system. "Final notice to all businesses. Harboring unauthorized species is a serious offense. Compliance inspections begin tomorrow." Sunmi watched the family's colors shift between fear and determination. They had already sacrificed so much for her. Could she ask them to risk everything on this desperate plan? But before she could voice her doubts, something extraordinary happened. The family's crystalline forms began resonating in perfect harmony, a decision made in their deepest crystal song language. Their bodies glowed with the same flesh-toned patterns they had developed since her arrival, a visible sign of their connection. "We're already a family," Riza said firmly. "And family means no one gets left behind." They spent the night preparing. Vox calculated the pod schedules while Tix gathered survival supplies. Nox modified a crystal growth chamber to serve as an emergency shelter inside the cargo pod. Riza programmed false mineral readings to mask Sunmi's presence. As dawn approached, bringing with it the threat of inspection, Locke showed Sunmi the hidden maintenance passage they would use. The eldest child's form pulsed with determined light. Tomorrow, when Koth's team arrives, they'll find nothing but a normal crystal shop, and you'll be safely away. Sunmi touched the wall of their home for the past weeks, feeling the vibrations of the family's crystal songs running through it. "I'll never forget what you've done for me," she whispered. "You changed us," Locke replied, their crystalline surface showing swirls of human-like coloring. "Now we'll change this station's future, one pod ride at a time." They had one chance to get it right. As station night faded into morning, the family made their final preparations. Whatever happened next would reshape all their lives forever. The day of escape began with Crystal Song. The Krill family stood in a circle, their bodies humming at a precise frequency that spread through the station's crystalline infrastructure. Slowly, communication systems began to crackle with interference. Officer Kuth's voice cut through the station's speakers, distorted and breaking. "All units, respond. Unauthorized energy. Signatures." Tix and Vox rushed to the market square, their small crystalline forms pulsing with carefully calculated patterns. They began a traditional growth ceremony in the middle of the trading floor, but with a crucial difference. Their frequencies matched the disruption pattern. Other crystalline beings found themselves inadvertently resonating with the children's song. Market stalls vibrated. Display cases hummed. The station's communication system deteriorated further into static. Meanwhile, Locke led Sunmi through maintenance tunnels, their crystalline form dimmed to near darkness. They moved silently, matching their steps to the station's natural vibrations just as they had practiced. "The transport pod is 3 junctions ahead," Locke whispered, their body flickering briefly with guidance patterns. "We have to time this perfectly." Back at the shop, Riza and Nox faced the approaching security team. Officer Kuth's sensors were going haywire, overwhelmed by the resonating crystals throughout the station. "What's happening here?" Koth demanded, their mechanical voice struggling against the interference. Riza stepped forward, her crystalline form beginning to pulse with an entirely new pattern. The color spread through her crystal structure, not the human-like pigments they'd grown accustomed to, but something else, something powerful. "We're simply growing crystals," she said, as her body emanated waves of disruptive energy. "Isn't that what crystal beings do?" Nox joined her, their forms synchronizing. The security team's sensor arrays sparked and shut down, overloaded by the unprecedented frequencies emanating from the pair. In the market, chaos peaked as Tix and Vox's ceremony reached its crescendo. Crystalline beings throughout the station were caught in the resonance, their bodies automatically responding to the ancient growth songs. Security forces found themselves unable to move effectively, their sensors useless in the crystal song interference. Sunmi and Locke reached the transport pod access point. "Quick," Locke urged, their form pulsing with urgency. "The pod's shielding will protect you from scans, but you'll need to be completely silent." As Sunmi climbed into the cramped space, she grabbed Locke's crystalline hand. "Your family changed everything for me." "You changed us too," Locke replied, their form showing one last swirl of human-like coloring. "Now go, change everything else." The pod sealed shut just as station security finally broke through to the maintenance level. Locke faced them, their crystalline form blazing with the same protective frequency as their parents. Through the market, through the corridors, through every crystalline structure in the station, the Krill family song built to impossible levels. Their bodies glowed with colors never before seen in their species, not human pigments now, but something new, something that spoke of evolution, of change, of barriers broken. Security systems failed throughout the station. In the confusion, no one noticed one small cargo pod launching on its scheduled route, carrying precious cargo toward freedom. When the resonance finally faded, Officer Kef found the Krill family standing calmly in their shop, their forms once again clear and normal. But something had changed. The station's crystals still hummed with echoes of their song, and nothing would ever be quite the same. "Your inspection can proceed," Riza said quietly, her form showing no trace of the power it had wielded moments before. But everyone present knew they had witnessed something unprecedented, a family's love transforming not just themselves, but the very nature of their species. The cargo pod carrying Sunmi disappeared into the darkness of space, leaving behind a legend that would reshape relations between humans and crystalline beings forever. The cargo pod carrying Sunmi docked at a civilian station 3 days later. As she emerged, shaky but alive, news of the unprecedented events at Trading Station Delta 9 had already spread across the galaxy. The Krill family's crystalline evolution became the talk of every scientific community. Researchers flocked to Delta 9, amazed by the lingering changes in the station's crystal structures. The Krill family's bodies still showed traces of their transformation, permanent marks of their time with Sunmi. But more fascinating were the new frequencies they could produce, frequencies that suggested their entire species might have more potential than anyone had imagined. Officer Koth, surprisingly, became one of the strongest voices for change. "I witnessed something impossible," they reported to the station council. A crystalline family adapted not just their bodies, but their fundamental nature, through simple contact with a human. "We can't ignore the implications." The council's debate lasted weeks. Evidence mounted. The Krill children's enhanced abilities, the station's altered crystal networks, and most importantly, the undeniable proof that humans and crystalline beings could form deep, transformative bonds. 6 months after her escape, Sunmi stood before that same council, no longer a fugitive, but an officially appointed ambassador. She wore a crystal pendant that pulsed with familiar frequencies, a gift from her adopted family. "The Krill family didn't just save my life," she told the assembled delegates. "They proved that our differences can become our strengths." Their bodies changed because they chose to open their hearts, their home, and their culture to someone different. That's not a mutation, it's evolution. The station's new policies rolled out gradually. Human traders were cautiously welcomed. Cultural exchange programs began, but the most significant change was in the crystalline beings themselves. More families reported subtle changes when they opened themselves to interaction with other species. Each change was unique, but all pointed to the same truth. Connection could transform them at a cellular level. Ticks and Vox became teachers, helping other crystalline children learn to communicate with different species. Their ability to project both crystal songs and human-compatible frequencies made them natural bridges between cultures. Lox joined the station's diplomatic corps, their experience helping shape new interspecies protocols. Riza and Nox's shop transformed into a cultural center, where their unprecedented family story inspired others to break down barriers. The storage room, where they had hidden Sunmi, became a museum piece, a reminder that sometimes the greatest changes start in the smallest spaces. 1 year after her escape, Sunmi watched a ceremony that would have been impossible before. Human and crystalline children played together in the market square, their laughter mixing with crystal songs in perfect harmony. The station's crystals pulsed with combined frequencies, no longer disrupted by the mixing of species but enhanced by it. "We never expected this," Riza said, her crystalline form glowing with the now familiar mixture of traditional and adapted patterns. "We just wanted to help one person." "Sometimes the smallest choices have the biggest echoes," Sunmi replied, touching her crystal pendant. It hummed in response, carrying the frequency of family, a song that now meant the same thing to humans and crystalline beings alike. The Krill family's choice to help one stranded human had sparked a transformation across known space. Their biological adaptation became proof that different species could change each other for the better, that compassion could literally reshape reality. As Sunmi prepared to leave another diplomatic mission, she looked at her adopted family. Their bodies still showed the marks of their time together, permanent reminders that some changes go soul deep. They had started as smuggler and refugees, turned into family, and ended up as pioneers of a new age of interstellar cooperation. The crystal pendant at her throat pulsed with warmth, carrying the message that had started it all. Family transcends form. Love transforms, and sometimes the most beautiful changes come from the most unlikely friendships.